Hello, welcome to episode 26 of the Hybrid Ministries Tech Forum, where we discuss all matters relating to the challenges and opportunities of live streaming worship services and other events. Whether you're considering a one-way broadcast or interactively engaging worship, your online congregants experience should be the top of mind as you plan your services. While they may come for the community, the message, or the music, the quality of your presentation and the level of engagement that you offer pretty much determines how long they'll stick around, which is the whole point, right? So if you're with us live, you are an important part of this show. Your questions and comments help produce the show and steer where the show goes, what topics we discuss, and this on this end on future shows as well. If you're with us on YouTube, get ready with a portable device for a QR code that I'll put up in a moment. Because the way that you contribute to the show is not on Zoom or YouTube's chat feature, it is on our Discord. They really don't fit our needs. Our Discord is how we take your questions and we see your comments and your chats. And we do this all week long. The Discord is there 24/7 for conversation and questions and answer and for information for you guys. So it's like our private version of social media and so much more. So if you find the show valuable, you'll really appreciate the Discord. In it, you'll find a category named Live Show with channels under it named Live Questions and Live Chat. There are several other ways you can engage with us. If you're live on Zoom, you can stick around here after we're done with the formal part of the show and participate in a post-show where we'll have conversations with open microphones. Also, if you have value to offer our viewers, if you're doing web streaming, maybe you can offer a different perspective on what we're talking about or an experience, you can join our panel. Just get here 30 to 60 minutes before the start of the show, and we'll check you in. If you want to invite other people to the show, you can find the Zoom and Discord registration information on our Facebook page and on our Facebook group, and also information about upcoming episodes. So, who are we? We are a growing international and multi-faith community representing congregations of all sizes and faiths. The topics we discuss here, religious denomination should be and probably is transparent. We all want to communicate with our communities as effectively as we can, and so we are here to help each other up our game. And we're just one in a related set of communities that our panelists and I contribute to, dedicated to all flavors of media production. So if you're hungry for more, look for links in the Discord under related shows. Now, media production, even for worship, is a rich and deep area of interest and continuing study. You can learn one way to accomplish a task, but then you'll find that there are multiple ways that you could offer and that you can do it, and these might offer you creative opportunities, improve your results, enrich your personal satisfaction, and make your work more interesting. Last season, we ran training classes on Mondays for audio skills and Tuesdays. Sound is the medium by which we communicate. Like, pictures are wonderful. They keep us engaged. They keep our attention. But sound is how we communicate information. And that's why mixing for the room, mixing for the stream, and for recording is incredibly important to do well. So we're planning on different ways that we can offer more training opportunities, and that's something that we're going to be gearing up over the next couple of months. So stay tuned for more announcements. Okay, so before we get to it, I want to thank all of our panelists today. We're going to start out with Joanna Lovell in Pennsylvania. Say hello.
I thought you were going to say it was Crystal first, but okay.
We can't hear you.
Okay.
All right, and then we have Mark Plukas in Massachusetts.
Wait.
No?
Wait, here we go. This is me.
All right, Joanna. All right, we have Mark Plukas in Massachusetts. All right. And then we have Leo Mendel in London.
Hey.
Say hello, Leo. Cool. Michael Kyer in Seattle.
Hello.
Marty.
Hey. Jeff Widgren in Kansas. and Crystal Vakes in Florida. And today we're welcoming Dana Tucker in Southern Virginia.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. All right, so today we're going to do something different. Rather than us starting off the show with a topic, we are going to hear from you guys, our community, our congregation, everybody here. This is why we're here. We're here for you. So we want to know what you are doing, what's up, what concerns and topics you have for what you've been doing. So I can't do that. Okay, so we want to know what you've been doing. So last week we heard from, can I get a spotlight, please? Last week I do have it. Last week we heard from 3 congregations about their progress in their upgrades. New mixers, new sound, speakers, new microphones, new video switches, new cameras. We heard from these 3 congregations about how they're doing. So some are more along than others, and some have been doing live streaming for a couple of weeks, and some are still getting there. So everybody's in a different place, but everybody has questions because this is something that everybody is still trying to figure out, right? So what are your questions? Where are you at, and what is challenging you at the moment? I frequent a lot of the church tech Facebook groups and interact with people there, so I have some idea of, kinds of things that people are exploring or struggling with, or what ideas they have. So let's hear from you. And ask us questions. So if anybody on the panel has anything they want to start with, we can do that. Otherwise, we would like to see questions in our Discord so that we can ask, we can address it. So if there's anybody on the panel, that would be great. Otherwise, I will start off with a topic just to get the ball rolling.
Marty, do we have the people from St. Louis on board tonight? Were we going to present that?
Do we?
It was great when I asked them how things were going with them. Everything seems to be going well, and the email described a very grateful bunch of people at that congregation, grateful to us and grateful to all the tech knowledge that they've received since the pandemic, and they're taking the next steps.
Yes, they were very appreciative of being a part of what we do here, and we will have them on in about 3 weeks. They will be on our show to give us a status update and a demonstration.
Great.
And we thank them for that. We do have a question that just came in from Scruffy Nerfherder in Peoria, Florida, in Peoria. So he wants to know any recommendations for a wireless microphone that will mainly be used to record piano. Wireless microphones to record piano. That's an interesting one. Generally, that's not a practice that we would recommend doing for a number of reasons. Wireless microphones generally have a restricted dynamic range and frequency response. And a piano is a very dynamic, even percussive instrument that has really low frequencies, really high frequencies, and the balance of that is really important. So wireless microphones wouldn't be my first choice to mic a piano. That really wants to be, you get much better results from a wired connection for that.
Marty, I'd say if you're going to go wireless, look into wireless instrument connections. There's a million of them out there, but
You mean like what they would put on a cello or something?
Or like what they would put on an electric
on a guitar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, something with broader dynamics and broader frequency response. But yeah, something you'd use to get a guitar back to the amplifier.
So I'm kind of with Marty on the whole wireless thing. Probably not the best idea. I think a small condenser mic would do better on piano. This is a very cheap one. They go from $60 all the way to $3,000, but it's a small condenser.
Looks like an
Word.
NT5. Who's that?
MXL.
Ah.
But this works on my piano nicely. And actually 2 of them will work even better. Something at the top and something at the bottom of the strings. Or even the top and the bottom of the piano. Really
I'm guessing the
fancy.
question came because they're going to have real problems trying to wire something. So in that case, yeah, try if wiring is not an option for you, look at some musical instrument wireless links.
Was my question.
Piano is such a large instrument that we generally do mic it with, we do use 2 microphones, one for the highs, one for the lows. And when you do that, you can vary the distance between the microphones and the strings and the hammers so that you can balance the highs with the lows. It's interesting, the kinds of transmitters that would be put on an electric guitar, they have a special kind of input to those transmitters for the pickup, for the magnetic or piezoelectric pickups in those instruments. And the kind of microphone that you would use in a wireless transmitter for voice, for instance, is a small diameter electret microphone that, although omnidirectional, tends to be somewhat directional in the high frequencies. And so it's such a small microphone, it would be really difficult to put on a piano. I had a couple of other questions here. Any favorite or generally necessary EQ settings for your broadcast mix? For example, high pass, low pass, etc. Okay. So, anybody want to chime in on this one?
Raise the lows, brother, and drop the highs.
Hey, Marty, where are you reading that question
Yeah,
from?
where are you getting these questions?
In the live question
In
channel.
September 16th live questions?
No, 23.
Oh.
Under live show.
I don't. Oh, there it is. Thank you.
There it is.
With the X32s, and we find, and we talk about this a lot, the majority of the people are listening on their smartphone. They're either listening to it sitting on a desk or they're plugged into it using some earbuds, and they're having a problem. The Walmart effect with speakers, there are certain frequencies you do not get, and they're just not going to produce them because of the quality of the speaker. And in general, what everybody seems to think is if you boost up that low end just a little bit, you drop the highs down just a little bit, that the majority of the time you would think it would make the mix muddy, but it doesn't. And as far as the EQ goes, if you're going to EQ the channel strip and then you're EQing the instrument, or you're EQing the vocals and then you're trying to EQ the room, and you try and run all of this into your broadcast mix, we just kind of come to the conclusion that, way back, the old saying was it was better to move your microphone than it was to move your EQ. So if you do anything, just do it very, very gently, while having someone listen on the other end to tell you whether it sounds better or it doesn't. EQing is one of those things that's hard to do when you're not physically there and you're not in that room.
That's very true. And we make it a practice to monitor the audio that we're sending to the stream, and we can do that live. And you have to do that from the right place in the audio chain. So, and that can be kind of tricky to do, depending on how you're sending your audio to your streaming encoder. But if you're doing a separate mix for the stream and you're using one console, then remember that your input channels, any adjustments that you make to your input channels will affect both the audio in the room through the loudspeakers and to the stream. And so what I think that's being asked here is, what adjustments might you make on the bus that's being sent just to the stream? And that's a good question, because that's really the only place that you can make those adjustments just for the stream. And so that's a good idea, Dana, to if you're assuming, if you're considering, if you've asked and found out that most people are listening to very small speakers on their phones or earbuds, and not, say, for instance, through full range speakers that could be attached to a laptop or a desktop, then bumping up the lows a little bit, dropping the highs just a little S curve, might be a good idea.
Couldn't we
Then
just
again,
also
you
across
also
the
want to be
board
careful
say a high
not to
pass
cut-
filter at like 100 hertz, like just roll off 100 hertz rumble, just kind of for the.
But when you do
effort of
that,
it?
then you're going to affect your keyboards, the lows on the keys, the kicks.
Not 100 hertz, not at 100 hertz. I don't think. I think you reduce some noise, just some low noise.
On vocal microphones and speech microphones, absolutely do
Not on the whole mix?
a low end roll off at around 100 hertz. Can even go higher on that depending on the person who's speaking. I don't know if I do that on a music mix though, because you have bass guitar and kick drum that you want to come through, and those go down below 100 hertz. But what Dana was suggesting is actually bumping up the low end, because on smaller speakers, you just won't get that much low end. So he's bringing it up to try and smooth things out.
Yeah, and we're talking 1 or 2 dBs here. We're not talking about anything drastic.
Right.
I think the last time that I really dug into this, it was something like 67% of people, young adults, people up in our generation, they're on a smartphone. I've got 2 smart TVs in the house. They're both connected to the Wi-Fi. I don't never turn them on to YouTube. If I'm on YouTube, I'm down here on my laptop or, on the wife's PC or, on my phone. And that speaker quality that you're getting from it, and what you were talking about was creating the separate mixes, one for the front of house and then the one for your stream. EQing is an art. There's certain things, if you're going to sit there and do those frequencies to get it just right, and you can look at frequency charts for every instrument out there. Vocals as well, they're a very good starting reference point, and you've got to tune it in by ear. And then when you get to the end of that bus, excuse me, do you EQ it before compression? Do you EQ it after compression? What tone are you looking for? And when you slap that on the very end of that, where it goes out, everything that you did before that is absolutely done away with. Because it's going to hit that, when you hit that last signal, if you're boosting up your lows for your kicks or your bass or the low end on your keys, and you sit there and do that, you do that high pass, it's just going to take it all out. That's what you're telling it to do.
Right. It's a final bus mix, final bus process is what we're talking about. So you've got your input channels, and you're making EQ and dynamics adjustments on your input channels. And there's a balance there between adjusting for the sound in the room and the sound for the stream. And that balance is both in frequency response and in dynamics and dynamic range. And then you're making some final adjustments on your streaming bus. And as Dana's suggesting, you want to be careful not to negate what you've done earlier by something you're doing later on. So anything you do on the mix bus would be a final adjustment that just tweaks things up and customizes them for the mix. And one of the most important things to do there is to reduce the dynamic range, because what's going out on the stream should have a much smaller dynamic range than what you can reproduce through the loudspeakers in the room. All right, moving on to the next question. This is from Joel S. from Mumbai, India. Welcome. For a Windows and vMix-centric setup, what would be better, a Stream Deck or X keys? Okay. So for those who are not aware, a Stream Deck and an X keys, these are programmable button pads. So here's a 32 button Stream Deck, right? And you'll notice, if you can see these, each of the buttons has text on them and icons so that you can tell what they are and what's going on them. That's about as far as my wire will allow us to go. And you can program these buttons to do many different functions. It's like a shortcut keys for software and for hardware. So one of the biggest differences between the X keys and the Stream Deck is that the Stream Deck buttons, what appears on the buttons, is programmable through software. So they're actually live video screens. You can put a live video picture on behind a button. You can put text, you can put icons, and you can change the colors. And you can arrange things so that the entire arrangement of the buttons can change depending on what mode you're operating in. So it's dynamic. The X-Keys products, X-Keys products are really nice. They come in different sizes as well. Some of them come with joysticks on them, so they can double as PTZ controllers or anything that you want to use a joystick for. And they come pretty large, so you can arrange a button pad to do many different things. But the button keys are static. You can put a paper label on them or mark them, and they don't change depending on what you're doing. So that can be a limitation. It can also be an asset because you always know what the buttons are doing all the time. So it's a matter of what you need. For me, I would generally prefer a Stream Deck unless I needed a joystick. And then if I did, I might put a small X-Keys device next to a Stream Deck. Okay, anybody else have any experience with
Yeah.
X-Keys?
So
and
there's a
Stream Decks?
couple of thoughts and some reasons, and you've explained quite a bit of this already. One of the things I'd say with particularly in vMix, there's a lot of things that you want to do at the same time of pressing of a button. The further you go with vMix, typically you're trying to choose a scene which has multiple assets that are associated with it. And so you want to be able to program those in, and they can be dynamic in what they do, and what you go from one scene to another, you want to expand. So what am I saying about this? I'm saying that you want to potentially, depending where you go with it, you may create a video, and when that video plays, you want it to do something at the end, or you want to go through a video. So say for example, you've got 5 or 6 videos, you can put them in a playlist, and each time you press the button, it wants to choose the next video in the playlist. Another thing that you may want to do with vMix is you may have multiple cameras come up at the same time. So with all those in mind, it's important that the button can be dynamic, and that's where the advantage of the Stream Deck is, because you can have different buttons. You can also, one of the things I see happen quite a lot is have 2 Stream Decks. One Stream Deck which is for the cameras, and one Stream Deck which is for your videos, so that you've got 2 separate amounts. The disadvantage of the Stream Deck, a lot of people find it, is the tactileness of the buttons. They're quite soft on the push, and if you want to know that you've definitely pushed it, the X keys have a much harder click that actually makes it easier to know that you pushed it. Others?
All right. Well, thank you. let's see. Where shall we go next? Okay. From Chris Clark in Austin. I'm a fan of cardioid microphones from Line Audio, Swedish company that makes very good sounding and often affordable cardioids and omnis. Lineaudio.se. Okay, well, that was a suggestion, I think, that dated back to the piano question. All right. Bruce McNair in Westport, Connecticut. Longer term, we need to run a wire across our sanctuary and put a few choir mics up high towards the stage. Until then, what's the best way to mic a choir on the stage without setting up mic stands in the middle of the room, which can get in the way of the cameras? Should I split up my matched pair of condenser mics currently on a T-bar and put one on each side of the room? So,
How big is the choir?
how big is the choir? Let's
How
see.
many
My
feet
recollection is that it could be a dozen people, maybe dozen and a half, sometimes smaller than that. So
If the choir is relatively small, the T-bar is fine. Just go ahead and use that.
I'd also add that although Bruce, who is here, so come in, Bruce, if there's anything on there. I would say that initially, when you put in the microphones, they become very noticeable. You add a new microphone in, and it looks very noticeable. It looks noticeable on the camera. But if you go and look at anything where you look at a choir or an orchestra on TV, you will see, if you look for the microphones, you'll see the microphones and they're quite visible. But once you've seen them, you don't see them anymore. And it's sort of the thing that the first time you put it in, yes, you'll see it. But after a while, you won't actually notice them. And actually what you'll notice is the better audio sound, that they're in the right place. So sometimes I find that miking a choir in front of them, facing to them, you'll get the sound that you want, because also you want to mix the sound, especially if your choir is broken out, so that you've got sopranos in one place and you've got tenors in there and the bass and all separated out. Choirs sound great when you listen to the whole of them, unless you can actually mic them individually and mic the individual groups. Now, the miking individual groups is great if your choir is tight. If your choir isn't that tight, you want to mic centrally with a bit of reverb to hide some differences, unless you've got auto-tune.
Mm-hmm.
I agree
I think,
with all that.
I think he's concerned about putting up, straight mic stands or boom stands where the booms will also be in the camera shot.
Yeah, but I agree with Leo. Once you see them, you don't see them anymore. And, it's the better way to capture the treble part of the choir and the bass part of the choir up and, from above. They kind of go, so the sticks will be in the video, but, but the trade-off to better audio, I think I'm all about the better audio.
I think people actually kind of expect to see microphones anyway, so it wouldn't be necessarily all that distracting. They've gotten used to it.
Second on the reverb on a not so tight choir.
Yeah. Well, it's a good question because
I don't know how to put it politely, but the reverb is your friend with certain choirs.
With certain choirs, yep.
Hides lots of mistakes.
But actually, that's why choirs sound so good, and why they sound better than a single voice, is because with the choir and the reverb, you are actually hearing the combinedness of the sound rather than individuality. And that's why if you mic for that joint, otherwise it is quite, you are talking about a lot of mics to pick it out, and it's quite tough. It's quite
I do
tough.
like the fact that he's going to be going for the cable mics hanging down. That's going to be your best solution. So
Yeah.
this is a temporary fix for Bruce, I think.
Yeah, but also
yeah.
I think it also comes down to that same thing with cameras. Sometimes it's better to put the mics and the cameras, put them up temporarily using something that's fairly easy, because getting up on high ladders and stringing microphones and then finding that they're in the wrong place is quite hard. You want something so you can actually adjust it quite easily to start with, and then you'll get the feel for how it should sound.
From a video standpoint, that's what we're doing in our congregation. I'm fabricating up some camera mounts for our mic stands, and we're gonna put the cameras on mic stands and move them around week after week to figure out where we like them best, and wherever we land on, that's where they're going to get screwed to the wall.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, balancing, using distance to your original source to balance the difference between the original source and the reverb from the room it can be very effective.
Yeah.
Too far and you're getting too much reverb, too close and it's too dry. So that's the challenge. And that's a fun challenge because I was in that room recently. It's a fabulous room. It's got a great sound to it.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. How big is the room? Is it already naturally reverberant?
It's not overly reverberant. So this is the Westport Church with that soaring roof line in the center. And all wood. It's beautiful. The thing is, though, that when you're doing rehearsals, you want to make sure that the choir has the floor marked, because if they come back for the service and they're not standing in the same place, they're closer to the congregation or farther back, that's going to change the distance between them and the microphone, and you won't get the same balance.
Absolutely.
So you have to be careful to go back to the same place.
As a former choir director, I would practice the choir actually walking up and then walking back down and then walking up and then walking back down, doing it as quickly and quietly as possible to get them to stand in the same place. And yeah, you're going to put up those two mics and then they're going to stand over here and you're going to be like, no, the mics are here. So it's important to get up and down quickly and quietly instead of having, sometimes people get up and then let other people pass them. They think they're being lovely and complimentary, but then takes forever for them to get up to the stage to start to sing, or to the chancel to start to sing.
Bruce is actually here. Have we answered those questions for you, Bruce? You can actually unmute. We haven't set this meeting so that you can't unmute. So if we haven't answered,
and I think he said anywhere from 3 to 4 people to up to 20 people, but we still don't know how far across they are. Well, but Marty described this space. Matt's
so when I was there, they had the pulpit to one side of the stage, and the choir would be sort of just to the right of middle. All right, let's see what else we have. From Matt Alsbaugh in Mexico. Speaking of reverb, what other kind of sound processing would you do differently on the stream audio versus the room feed?
Compression.
The other great sin hider.
Panning.
Panning.
The panning, with the audio, we think of it as in two-dimensional. When you create that stream, and guys, here again, this is just my opinion, but you've got to create that room that the listener is going to be in. And, with the panning, it may not be something you want to do for a live front of house service, but I think it would add some texture to your online stream if they can hear some different pans, from the toms, the kick, the singers, the backup singers. We were having this discussion the other day. Someone walked up and said, how did the acoustic guitar sound? And then, well, I can't hear it. Well, why not? I heard it perfectly. Well, you go up there and look at the board and it's panned hard right, and I'm sitting on the left-hand side of the chapel. And but in that stream, you can make it to where that person can make that room as wide as you want to make it. So, a little bit of compression, work with the panning, get things centered properly, And I'm just a real firm believer. It's all the little things that you do. You know, it's never one great big thing, but it's all the little things, and these little things add up
That's very true.
for your stream.
The sound stage, the stereo separation on the sound stage is a really important thing to do, especially if somebody's listening on earphones. That can be really dramatic when you're doing music, but even when you're doing speech with multiple people on camera, just to give them a little separation. If you have two people on camera who are either taking turns speaking, like doing a reading, alternate reading, or having a conversation or doing a story, providing that little bit of stereo separation for somebody to be able to pick them out in the stereo sound field just makes that much more dramatic.
Absolutely.
It's a really good idea to do. And of course, music, because
Panning can also help you reduce the amount of energy in the envelope that you're sending out.
That's true, because you've got two channels with audio energy on them. And while they can be combined to mono and will result in the same thing, when you're sending them out, they're in different places in the bit stream. So the energy level is different. But when you're listening to, especially when it's complex music, like, if it's a guitar player and a singer, that's very easy to listen to. But when you have more instruments, they can kind of interfere with each other when they're all smushed together in mono, and be very difficult to pick out one instrument from another instrument. And so when you give them a little bit of separation, and you have, one instrument here, you have your drums in the center, the bass guitar may be slightly off center, you have one guitar, you have another guitar, that just opens the whole experience of listening to music up. And that can also work in the room if you have a sufficient sound system and a big enough room to do that as well. So, and we're welcoming John Idelson onto the panel. How you doing, John? Good to see you.
Good to be here from sunny Monterey.
That's right. You're in California.
Sure,
so
just rub it in. It's been
Sorry
raining all
about
day.
Somebody has to be here.
Yeah, somebody has to be in California, I
But
suppose.
it makes it for an earlier evening for me. I realize a lot of you are at the end of your workday.
Especially Leo.
Especially Leo.
Yeah, especially me. I would just want to come back on that question about things that you add in for streams. So I should actually have pressed the right button, but there you go. You can. There you go. So I'm just looking at Mixer. So this is a 32 that we use at one of the synagogues, and what it's set up to do for the live and for the mix. So one of the things we do a lot of is
Leo,
we
you want to
actually
spotlight
run.
that? You want
Can you spotlight yourself, Leo?
Yeah, I've
Or
got
is
to
anybody
do.
else?
He's got a multi-spotlight. So
Yeah, I've got to do that as well.
Yeah.
So hold on, I've got to do that, and I've got to
There
add
we
a
go.
spotlight. There you go.
Great, thank you.
So there you go. Sorry. There's only so many things I could do.
Yeah.
Got to press this one. Right. Okay. So we actually run 3 mute groups. We have an all mute group, and we run these mute groups. If anybody's familiar with the X32, you have the mute buttons down the bottom right-hand corner of the desk. And so you actually use these live. So the first mute is mute everybody out, which we don't use very often. But we mute, when the choir is not singing, we mute the choir out. We also have another mute group, which actually adds reverb onto the choir and also onto all the mics. And we'll use that a lot. Literally every time there is singing, we will always add in reverb. But we take it off again because, you don't want that when somebody starts talking afterwards. It really is quite disconcerting when you hear it, but it makes a massive difference. On the actual output to the live stream, we also add in a stereo delay which you need to add in, and then on the actual mix out to the stream, we will actually add in the config, we will add in dynamics, as people were talking about, that will add in a compressor, so that we actually get that the compressor is added in. Because what you actually want to do, we found, is that everybody complains that the mix out isn't loud enough, but you don't want it too high that it causes you problems. So lifting it up and then adding a compressor does compress the sound down, does reduce some of the harmonics, but it actually means that most people listening have a better experience and people like it.
Yeah, that's
Here, here.
generally what I mean by compressing the dynamic range is exactly that, because in the room you can have audio that's as quiet as somebody speaking without any amplification, all the way up to where the speakers are about to blow up. And that's a huge difference in volume level that can come through the mixing board. But you can't have that going to the stream, because you don't really want people to be constantly adjusting the volume on their computers. And even having to do that just a little bit can be very distracting, which is why if you look in the gallery view, you'll see a square called audio meter. This is a meter that is listening to Zoom. It's not what's being sent to Zoom, it's what's coming out of Zoom. And before we go on the air, everybody takes turns talking into their microphone, so that they are hitting the target that you're seeing right now. If I speak louder, you'll see that it goes into the red. And so the target that we're looking at is just that point where it's just kissing the red. That is the point that everybody should be at. So when everybody speaks, they're sounding at the same level, so that you don't have to be adjusting your speaker volume on your computers. And when you are sharing screens, or you're playing a video clip or an audio clip, you want to make sure that you're checking those levels as well, to make sure that everything is still at a consistent level. Now, for music, you have a wider dynamic range than generally people speaking. So you might have a very soft guitar picking, and then you might have a full-on band performance. And you don't want that difference in volume level to be so great that people can't hear the very delicate guitar, and they don't want to be turning down their volume control for the louder parts. So that is the purpose of using compression in the mixing console on the bus going to the stream, to narrow that dynamic range so that people are very comfortable listening regardless of what's being played. And then you want to make Yep. And then
so I was going to say that, as well as doing it, so there's two different ways of doing that, as Marty said. So the first one I showed you was in the actual software mixer, or in the mixer, the X32. If I got to now, I've got to remove the pit spotlights and add the spotlights again, haven't I? Okay, so the other way of doing this, if you use vMix, vMix has a compressor built in as well. So this is looking at vMix on that same machine, and you can see that vMix has that compressor feature in there. As you move forward in your streaming, you may have started off with OBS. You may be going to YouTube. To Zoom. I think that you'll find that more and more people will move over to vMix eventually, because it offers considerably more features and functionality, and gives a better streaming experience. But it isn't where most people start.
Perhaps you've noticed you're listening to a TV show and everything's set at the right volume and you're comfortable and you're having a good time. And as soon as they go to the commercial break, all of a sudden it's really, really loud. That's because the dynamics are generally on a TV show left more open, and commercials are made to hit you in the face, and they heavily compress the commercials, which increases the amount of, again, we're back to the amount of energy in an envelope. The average loudness comes way up because they want it to be louder. They want you to notice the commercials. Whereas if you're listening to music on FM radio, let's say, everything sounds like it's at the same level all the time. And again, that's because it's so heavily compressed. Everything stays within a block of a blocky envelope, and you just adjust your volume to where you want it to be, and everything sounds pretty much the same. That is to say, if you're listening to pop music, rock and roll, that kind of stuff. And that's the value of the compressors in this case, is that the service that's going out the door is staying in a relatively narrow band of volume, and no one's ever getting surprised jumping for their volume control.
The Calm Act is what they called that when all the seniors complained to Congress because they were getting there, coming dozing off during their show, and all of a sudden, here comes the commercial, and they're you're peeling them off the ceiling.
Yeah.
And going back to the streaming, two other points that I found very interesting that makes a whole lot of sense is, there's a lot of things on your drum kit that you're not going to amplify for the front of house because it's loud to begin with. But you definitely want to accentuate that in your stream, as well as house mics. Again, you want that person to be listening. You want them to hear the amens. You want to hear them, that baby crying, if the baby's crying there in person. You're not going to sit there and run those mics through the front of house because the people that are there can already hear it. But these are the things that you want to, add in to where it just makes them feel like that they're there. And I think that's the whole purpose of it. If you can make that person feel like they're sitting in your sanctuary, then you've done your job pretty good. And going back to what you were saying, the AES, their loudness range, they recommend 4 dBs. Because if I'm listening to a stream and I have to constantly adjust my volume between the preaching or the singing or little Missy walking up to the podium mic, I'm going to click off of you because it hurts. If I've got my earbuds in and all of a sudden it gets real loud and I've got to rip them out, I click off.
Well, especially for a worship service, the main goal is to create a spiritual experience. And in order to do that, you have to be immersed in the experience. Anything that distracts you from that, even as small as reaching over and finding the button to raise or lower your volume, it takes you out of the experience. And so it's really important to make sure that when we're doing a stream, we are removing as many distractions as possible. 2 related questions that I want to read out. One comment actually from Matt in Mexico. Big thumbs up for the audio meter. It took a lot of subjectivity out of our mix, especially when volunteers or amateurs are on duty. And so, yes, that is absolutely correct. And it's one of the beautiful things about using this kind of tool is that there's no subjectivity about, is it loud enough? Is it too loud? I like it at this volume. They like it at that volume. So this is the deterministic level that everybody should be at. But Keith Miller in Paint Branch, Maryland wants to know, how do you adjust the streaming mix when some people will listen on good stereo equipment and some will listen on a one iPad speaker with many other possibilities in between? Well, there's a compromise to be made for sure. We generally want to limit the dynamic range to no more than, I think, 10 dB, right? And so that's where I would set the compression for. Now, you want to be sure that you're not squashing the life out of everything, right? So there's also a matter of gain staging. So Leo was demonstrating and showing how a compressor works. There's a threshold level above which the device will bring the peak levels down, right, by a certain amount based on the ratio. 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1. The higher the first number, the higher the ratio, the more the peak levels come down. But also a part of that is how much level you're feeding into the compressor. Where the threshold level may stay the same, but if you're feeding too much level into the compressor, then pretty much all the audio is going to be higher than the threshold level that you're setting. If the audio level is too low going into the compressor, then almost nothing is going to be above the threshold level that starts the compression. So you want to be sure that you're feeding the correct level into the compressor and making adjustments along the way. But
so,
yes, you will
Marty,
have.
the other thing I'd say on there, going back to the core question, is about the levels. So you saw the meter that you're running there, which is the Union meter. This one is the WLM plus meter. It is actually only listening to the remote end. It's not listening to me. But again, it's exactly the same. We're aiming for a figure. The question that everybody wants to know is, what's the level that I should set it that everybody at the remote end are used to? 24 dBs is about right for voice, minus 24. For song or for music, and if you're looking at something like YouTube, it runs at minus 15 dB, so it's louder. And without going into great details, 3 dB is a doubling in sound. So from minus 24 to minus 15, you're going up 3 times as loud. And that's typically what it sounds. Don't want to go into great details, but that's how it is. At the moment, that meter isn't listening to me because it's not. But if Marty talks,
Your level is not hearing you, but it's hearing me. And so when I'm talking, we're hitting a minus 23, a minus 25, and we're really aiming for a minus 24. So we're right on the money there.
Okay, so both meters are working in that. This one is paid. WLM. Thank you. Too late. It's nearly
English,
1 o'clock in the morning. And but the Julian one is free. Get it, put it on the PC that you stream on. It's well worth it. It's well worth it. And the nice thing is you don't actually have to listen. You can just see it visually. And by seeing it visually in the corner of your eye, you know if it's about right without having to worry if you're, especially when you're swapping mics, if somebody else is on or there, you know roughly if you've got the right levels.
Mm-hmm. Now,
Can I throw
you
something
said put
in?
it on the computer that you're streaming from, and you can do that. I put it on a different computer that I'm streaming down to. So it is listening to the stream rather than what's being put out on the stream. And both meters are useful. They're just showing you different things.
J-Lo.
I just want to say it might be worth attempting to educate your congregants on how to enjoy the service in the best environment that they can produce. So rather than saying, I know, Keith, I know what you're saying, people are only either listening on their phone or what other system are they listening on, I would take the time to possibly talk people through. If you want to stay home and you're not at the service and you want to have the best experience that you can have, then you would think about what your best system is in your home to listen from. And a little bit of education there, I think it would go a long way.
And I think people need
idea.
to be aware as well as all these platforms have their own thresholds. So if you have your audio coming in extremely hot, above what they want to have, they are going to compress it as well to get it down to that. And you talk about these meters, I think it's a wonderful thing. I'm sitting here talking into it now, looking at your meter. I'm adjusting my gain going into my Elias mixer that's going up to the Fed head that's going into the 7B, and I can simply fine tune it to just, you know, it's a wonderful thing. It's just another one of those small steps to keep these platforms, because people say it all the time, you know, my music never sounds that compressed. Well, that's because you're taking it up there at a -8, a -9 lofts, you know, and their platform's just not going to play it at that.
Right. And to be more specific, each of the streaming platforms, and this is, you know, particularly true for music streaming, but also for video streaming. So YouTube and Facebook Live and Vimeo and others, they have their own standards for what level they want to see. And they're different. So I don't have the data handy, but they could be as much as 7 or 8 or even 10 dB different between the two. So one might be a -15, another one would be a -25. That's a 10 dB difference in the level that they are expecting you to send to them as optimal. So now Zoom doesn't have a specification, but we have done some testing and found that for the kind of material that we're doing, a -24 works very well. But you can check with, if you're using a different platform for streaming out, such as YouTube or Facebook, you can check into their information and find out what level their standards are set at. Okay, let's see. Leo Mindell here on the panel wants to know, how are you pushing your screen to, nope, this is a question from Scruffy to Leo. How are you pushing your screen to the Zoom meeting vMix with NDI tools? So he wants to know how you're pushing your vMix screen to Zoom.
And with that cool little picture-in-picture.
Okay, so what I'm actually doing, I'm doing it all with Ecamm, but there's loads of different ways of doing it. So I'm going to leave Marty on the screen while I do this for a reason. Because I personally feel that one of the worst things, we haven't really talked about this in here, but one of the worst things I ever see in services is people when they click the button called screen share. I refuse to use the button called screen share unless I really have to. How do I get around that? I use Ecamm, which is a virtual camera, and I can actually sit there and show slides. So we can actually run slides. At the moment, it's got a picture of me on there. I can actually remove me off there. And we can actually run slides that we'll go through, and we can run, I've got to click on the right one. We can actually run slides, and we can go to the next slide. And you can have the person talking and the slides on the screen at the exact same time without having to lose everybody else in the congregation or lose everything else that you have. How do we control the slides? That's a really interesting one as well. And you may want to try this if anybody wants to try this. If you go to remoteforslides.com on your browser, if anybody wants to try this, remoteforslides.com, and then once they get there, hit the 6-digit number, which is 693869. Sorry, I'll read that again. Sorry, it's tied on. 963869. 963869. Hopefully somebody's got there. Remoteforslides.com. And once you get that up, you'll get a next and a whatever. And now, hopefully, if somebody's got it, I'm going to keep my hands. I'm going to put my picture of me back on so you can see me again. I'm going to hold my hands up here, and hopefully somebody's got it. There you go. Look at that. My slides are moving. Okay. So you can actually give people your the ability to change the slides, to move them forwards or backwards. This is in Google Slides. and present them through. And it's a much more, I feel, a much more inclusive way of showing things like slides on a screen or showing things, rather than resorting to pressing that share screen button and move everybody into that tiddly little corner in there. That's how I do it.
That's great. Now, you said you're using Ecamm, but
I'm using Ecamm, but you could have done that in OBS, which you do, Marty. You use OBS when you do it.
I use OBS, yeah. But you're using Ecamm, not vMix?
No, vMix doesn't run on a Mac.
Oh, right. Okay.
So Ecamm runs on a Mac and vMix runs on a PC. They're the best two
Now,
for each platform.
Is there a difference in the visual quality when you're doing it this way versus sharing a screen?
It depends. If you're in a HD Zoom call, there is very little. You actually get higher definition on screen sharing, but lower frame rates, because it's designed to give that. So it's designed for that. So if you want higher definition and higher frame rates, you do this in an HD meeting. And if you want to look at the difference of me, so that's me through Ecamm, you're looking, if I go to native me, so not through Ecamm, you probably notice a slight difference in color. Mm-hmm. So you can see there's a slight difference in color. But also, sometimes it also makes me disappear.
Where'd he go?
Oh, there you go. There you go. That's another trick. That's not Ecamm. That's done in an ATEM, but you can actually do that in an ATEM as well.
All right. Now I imagine that a lot of people here don't have HD accounts, don't have 1080 accounts, and we've seen that. Like I've shared screens through my OBS, and people have noticed that the resolution isn't quite as good as it could be or would be when I use the share screen. So if you're not on a 1080 account, first thing is that everybody should be on a 720 account. So even with just a pro account, you can make sure that you're on 720. There are a couple of different ways that you can do that. One is to call your Zoom sales rep and just ask for it. They will generally give it to you. Tell them you're a church. You do a service every week. You want people to be able to see it in as good a resolution as possible. They will give it to you. It won't cost you any more. There are a couple of other tricks that you can use to do that without calling. If you have a Facebook portal device, which is something that you can actually buy from Facebook, looks like a tablet, but it's not. It's a sort of an internet-connected communication device that you can receive streams on YouTube and Facebook, and it has certain built-in apps to it. It sits on your kitchen counter. It's got a really good speaker and a decent microphone in it. Anyway, anytime you log into a Zoom event or meeting with a Facebook device, it will automatically pump the entire meeting up to 720. There's another way you could do this is to go onto a browser and browse to meetingmeters.com. That's meetingmeters.com. You enter in your meeting ID and passcode, and it will join the meeting, and when it does, it will bump it up to 720. So there's a few ways that you can increase your resolution for free, right? Except in the Facebook portal, you have to buy that. But once you have that, you can do it anytime.
See that John has his hand up, Marty?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, John.
Marty, I was going to add that.
Jump right in. You don't need to raise your hands.
Okay, well, just trying to follow various protocols for the various meetings I'm in. Anyway,
Appreciate that.
Facebook portal is one way of doing that. Some people may not be comfortable with the Facebook. Now with the Amazon devices, I think it's the Amazon 10. You could also do it with the Amazon Fire TV device. I think they had that on sale for $119. With the Amazon Fire TV, you can actually put 2 different USB cameras on it. So that will also do the same bump up. The advantage of the Facebook portal is that you could use the HDMI output as a camera source. So it's a pretty clever auto tracking camera. And you could use the USB-C port on the Facebook TV to have it hardwired to your network. So it gives you a cleaner video. And I've used the portal TV in a number of locations, replacing stationary cameras and pan-tilt zoom cameras that we've had for a very low cost compared to what it do to replace a full PTZ camera.
John, those are auto tracking for video, right? But not audio. What's the audio like on, say, that Amazon Fire?
On the Facebook portal, it is in fact video auto tracking, and the audio from the portal is not very good.
It's not very good, right?
So that's why the Fire TV that Amazon has, which essentially lets you put a USB microphone in and different USB cameras. So you could probably get better audio from the Fire TV than from the portal. Although I'm just experimenting with that, so
I'll try that
mileage
for
may
next
vary.
week. I have a Fire Stick TV in the other room. I think I'm going to try that.
It's not the Fire Stick, it's the Cube they have.
Oh, do I need a device? I mean, it's already in. I bought it with Fire TV already there.
No, this is the. Let
a
me
stick.
see if I can tell you exactly
It's
what
like
it's
literally a
called.
stick.
It's their actual device. So
Well, I think I could. I'm pretty sure I could hook up a microphone into my TV.
well, it'd be a good question. It's the Fire TV Cube that I've experimented with, and that goes for $100 on Amazon.
Okay.
You could go on to the App Store on Amazon and see if you could load Zoom into it. I think
true.
I know people have done it on the 10-inch Amazon device, but I don't know anybody who's done it with a Fire Stick.
Cool. Thanks.
All right. I'll bring up a comment that Graham made about something that Dana was talking about, and that was ambient microphones in the sanctuary. Even just for quiet times in the service, they are important to be included in the stream. Room microphones, ambient microphones, congregational microphones, they really help to provide a sense that for the people at home that there are actually people in the room. It's not a studio recording and it's not a studio broadcast. There is a live audience and congregants in the room. They are singing, they're moving around, they're talking, they may be call and responsing, and that's a big part of your service experience, and you want to be able to capture that and bring that to the people at home, because it's, they want to feel like they are in the room as well, and so that's all part of being in the room. So yes, ambient microphones are really important.
I'll tell a quick stupid story that's somewhat related, just because. First telephone system that I installed that was digital, it was replacing an old crossbar switch system in a radio station. And I don't know, for those of us with gray hair, you'll remember that when you were put on hold, what you heard on hold was tick, 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 and it was a bar going around hitting relays, and it would just keep a line alive. But being on hold meant you heard that ticking sound all the time, and you knew they hadn't hung up on you because you could hear that. When we put in this system, we didn't think to put any signal in for music on hold because we hadn't discovered that feature yet. And we'd put people on hold and they'd hang up the phone because they thought we'd hung up on them. For a little while, we actually put a metronome as the audio input on the holds that would go tick, 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 so they knew that they were still on hold, just like an old crossbar system. And then eventually we figured out, hey, we can pump the radio station into this thing and put music on hold. But anyway, that's my stupid story that's somewhat related.
No, it's a good one. It's a good one. Yep, everybody wants to know that somebody else is still there. So we have another question from Graham for Leo. He wants to know how you did the circular mask around your camera, and can you do the same thing in OBS?
Yes, you can. I did do it in Ecamm. But one of the things I wanted to show you, I've gone to another machine here. This is another synagogue, and let me get rid of that. So this is using OBS. This one. So you're seeing a standard OBS setup. There, you're seeing one camera. And you can see different cameras. You know, it's dark there. Obviously, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. But do remember that what you can also do in OBS is you can put multiple cameras in, and when you into a single shot. So if you do multiple cameras, so this is a 2-camera shot. You're going to have to just work it out. It's a bit dark. I'm sorry, but you can see that there's 2 cameras are showing up there. But this is a 3-camera shot as well. And then you're seeing 3 different cameras on that screen at the same time. And the way you do it is you put different layers in. If you wanted to make one of those cameras, the question that you're asking is that you, sorry, wrong button, is you look at the properties in the, no, sorry, wrong one. I'll get the right one. Third time lucky, filters. You can do effect filters. And when you do the effect filters, I can't remember the exact one. I think it's either the crop pad or the image mask. You can actually change the layout of how that looks and make differences on there. So it is possible to do this in OBS to make little round circles of people. I've actually seen it with OBS. What you can also do is you make the round circle and you can put a blur on the outside. So it sort of makes like a sun halo effect. That is all doable on OBS.
There's lots of things you can do if you just know where to look, right?
That hidden area of the effects is the thing that a lot of people don't realize is there, and it makes a massive. There's a huge amount of effects and things that you can do to bring it up. But one of the things I would say also, if you are an OBS user, and you go back to what I was looking at there, and you look at what that looks like, and if I just go to the 2-camera view, you know, they've got branding on there. They've got lots of other things in there rather than just being a single camera. You could do a single camera view, or I can take one of those cameras. Let me just do this. If you are an OBS user, you'll know about playing around with so that you just don't lose everything you do. You can actually drag that whole camera out and make it to the outside. Hopefully you can see where my mouse is moving, but to that blue light, to the 2 blue lines, and it would make a much nicer shot than being full frame sometimes. Do look at it. Do look at ways of just changing what your people are looking at on Zoom, so that it doesn't just look, as I say, that horrible Zoom, and then you go and lose it all because you go and screen share into the top right hand corner.
There are a lot of hidden features, or features that aren't readily visible in OBS and vMix and others. You may have to go searching for them, especially because the documentation for OBS is not great. But poke around, you know. You see things like properties and filters and such. Open them up, look and see what's there, play with them, see what they do. And that's all before you can get to additional plugins that you can get for those programs as well, to even further increase their flexibility and their feature set. Okay, we have a question from Paul G. Based on your discussion just a moment ago, does it make sense that my Zoom statistics are saying that the video resolution is 640 by 240, whenever Marty is speaking. So Zoom has a lot of different streams going on. There are outgoing streams and there are incoming streams, and the resolution can change depending on what you're looking at and what mode you're in. So if you are looking at the gallery view right now, or even if you're looking at the panelist view, but you're not full screen, you might see a different resolution. So let's have everybody do this. Open up at the bottom left of your Zoom window where it says video, stop video, or start video, whatever. Open up that little up caret and choose video settings. And then scroll down on the left side to where it says statistics. Now, what you'll see there is look across the top, you'll see the tabs, and the first one is overall. And on the left side, you'll see your CPU, which is the main processing unit in your computer. And it'll show you what its health is, how big the load is right now. On the right side, it says memory. And because Zoom uses both CPU and memory, you'll see if anything is more than medium, right, in the overall, then you are overtaxing your system. So then we can go over on the top. Let's go over to video. And here is where you see the video performance that you're both sending and receiving to Zoom, right? So if you're not full screen, if you're gallery view or presenter view but not full screen, you might see a resolution on the receive side as low as 200 by 130 or something like that. But do this, now go full screen to presenter view, and you'll see it pop up to something like 1280 by 720, because you're now using all of the screen area on your monitor if you have an HD monitor. Now this is really handy.
I'm sending at a very low, right? So 160 by 90, I'm sending it, but I'm getting 1280 by 720.
Right. So what you're sending will be determined by what anybody is seeing. So if nobody is looking at you full screen, if you're in a gallery view on everybody's screen, then it won't ask you to send more than that low resolution because nobody can see anything more than that. But if I were to pin you...
So I've just pinned JLo now. JLo,
okay.
Have you just jumped? Has it just jumped for you?
No, I don't see myself.
What are you seeing for your
What's
sending
your
resolution?
stats say now?
My status is 1280, 720.
That's right.
There you
You're
go.
sending? Because Leo pinned you full screen to his screen. So now Zoom is asking your camera for a higher resolution. So this is really, the statistics is a very valuable set of information for anybody who's doing streaming. You want to know how much you're sending. You want to know how much you're receiving. Receive is arguably more important than what you're sending, because when you full screen, when you have a computer that is watching your stream and you full screen your Zoom, you want to look at the resolution and see that'll show you your maximum resolution. And it should say 720 if you're full screen. Let's see. What else is going on here? So Matt is addressing Leo. You're using Google Slides. How does that compare to PowerPoint?
Okay, so it's quite a good question. And there are different reasons to use both. For remote presentation via Zoom, etc., I find Google Slides easier because of the trick that I was showing you earlier, where I was doing the presentation. So I was actually, as I said, so when I brought it up, I've got a plugin onto Google Slides, which is called Remote for Slides, and you're able to tell anybody the slides. But I actually do use PowerPoint a lot for certain things. This is a typical example of a PowerPoint that I got given to present, and I'm sure many of us have been in the situation of a service is coming up, starting maybe in about 10 minutes, and you get a set of slides that look like this. And someone says, here you go, here's my slides. And you're like, oh, that's going to be great. So there is a couple of things, if you've ever used this, there's a new feature, or a fairly new feature, which if you click on design, then you get design ideas on the right hand side. If you click on design ideas, PowerPoint has a way of making your slides look a lot better. And it is worth using. Some of them it can't fix, but some of these it can fix. Now, I had a discussion with somebody this week who said, no, it's no good. It's horrible. And people should design slides properly. But my view is that this, if you're given 3 minutes to do it, is infinitely better looking than what you were given before.
But Leo, you're not in presenter mode. We can see all of your menus around the center.
I know. I'm not trying to show you in presenter.
Oh, okay. I just thought that's always the thing that challenges.
No. What I'm trying to show you is how you can, as a tip, to say that there is some tips to use PowerPoint in a way to make PowerPoints look nicer. Use this design ideas. When you then go to actually present.
Oh, okay.
When you then go to present in slideshow, you go to slideshow, set up slideshow, and change it to browse by individual window. Browse by individual window and say OK. And then when you press go, this window will convert to just the PowerPoint. And that's it. So you're not jumping, not losing the whole of your screen as you would do when you know how you normally do it and then you lose everything. You'll see it's just that window that you're getting there. So I actually use all three. I also use Keynote quite a lot because actually I think Keynote is the best out of the three. But for remote presentation where I'm controlling, I've got the slides on my machine and somebody remotely is actually clicking on it, I do that. A lot of the reasons I do that is that people only have one screen, and the minute they press go on PowerPoint, they lose that and they lose the ability to see everybody else. They lose the meeting. Also, I don't want them to do it in the share screen, as I talked about earlier. So I do that, and then they can see the meeting and see themselves and everything. And that's the way I prefer to do it.
To jump in on this.
Oh, I was going to say, can I ask Crystal to come in on this? I actually had it in my head to say that, and then I forgot.
I was going to say, with regard to Google versus PowerPoint, speaking purely from the church end of things, Google Workspaces are actually free to nonprofits. So it gives you access to a lot of their overall productivity suites, and then you can work in the workspaces and get Drive and everything else so everybody can collaborate there. So it's just a really good idea to work in that workspace. And just get used to that ecosystem. It saves you money on PowerPoint. So that's my 2 cents on it.
All right. Yeah, Google Workspace, Google Slides, Google Docs, Google Sheets, very valuable for working in teams, for collaboration. It's definitely a better way to go when you're working with people than working on a PowerPoint presentation on your own computer that you then have to share with somebody else. who might make changes to it, who might have to share it back to you, and that gets really messy because you don't know which version is current, or you might be making changes at the same time, and then one of you is going to lose your changes. So working with a collaboration, this is working in the cloud. Is everything is always up to date, and everybody is sharing with each other, and you can always know what's current. Good point. Thank you very much. Where else are we going to go? Okay, so we are at 8:27, right about at the end of our show. And so if there's any other questions, now's the time to bring them forth. Let us hear them. And then we can go into the post show, or we can talk some more. But let's see what else. And if there was, here's a question. I'll ask you a question. If there was one subject that you wanted to really dive into and get some really good information on, maybe something that you're struggling through with equipment or technique or style, maybe it's interaction with other people that you're working with, as it relates to planning for streaming. If there was one thing you wanted to know more about, what would it be? That's what I want to know. I want to know what that would be. Because that could be the subject of a show, of an upcoming show. So let us know that in either of the channels. Could be the question channel or the chat channel. We want to hear from you because that's why we're here. All right? So I want to thank all of our panelists and our guests today for such a wonderful conversation. This is community. This is how things work. It's a give and take. We're all here to help each other out. I love everybody on this panel, and I love people who come to participate with us. We're all doing this. Nobody's getting paid here. There's no real and no benefit to any of us.
Wait, what?
Who? No, wait a minute. You're getting paid? Oh my goodness.
Wow.
So you mean to say that Red Lobster certificate is not coming in the mail?
Oh,
Just bring me Cheddar Bay biscuits and I'll be fine.
There you go, sister. There you go.
I want your gift card number because there's a message coming from your minister.
Oh, hush you. Hush. Hush. Oh my God.
So watch the Discord for upcoming shows and where you can find recordings of this show and past show once I get them edited and posted. Most of our episodes are up on our YouTube channel, so go and check them out. This is all new ground that most of us are figuring out for the first time, some of us for the second time, who knows. But it's all new territory, so make it your own. You can redefine who your congregation is, who your community is. It's no longer limited to the size of your sanctuary or the number of parking spots in your lot. So that's part of the challenge, and we will continue because our service continues. Bye for now, and we go into the post show.